Announce auto levies soon and suggested some countries will receive breaks from reciprocal tariffs.
It happened. Well, the European Union lowered their tariffs to 2.5%. We were only at 2.5% for cars, which is very low. And as you probably heard, that European Union lowered their number from much higher than that, many, many times higher. Surprised to 2.5%. So that was good. But I don't know that I expect that. It's up to them.
Donald Trump has just unleashed another reckless trade war, and this time the global auto industry is in his crosshairs. His sudden 25% tariff on imported cars is set to drive prices through the roof, hurt American consumers, and spark international retaliation. Europe isn't staying silent. Leaders and automakers are gearing up for a fierce response, warning that Trump's move could wreck economies on both sides of the Atlantic. Buckle up because this fight is just getting started. Stay tuned for more updates. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
And what we're going to be doing is a 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff. We start off with a 2.5% base, which is what we were at, and we go to 25%, and you're going to see prices going down, but it's going to go down specifically because they're going to buy what we're doing, incentivizing companies to, and even countries, but companies to come into America and build. We're trying to get approved, if we can. If you borrow money to buy a car, you're allowed to deduct interest payments for purposes of income tax.
The new tariffs mean that car makers who sell vehicles in the U.S. will face higher costs, lower sales, and potential job losses. The impact could be widespread, affecting not only automakers, but also supply chains and consumers. Trump's decision follows his long-standing claim that the U.S. auto industry has been treated unfairly by foreign competition. He argues that American car manufacturers suffer because European and Asian companies flood the U.S. market with cheaper imports. By placing a 25% tax on these imported vehicles, he hopes to push more production inside the U.S. However, industry experts say the plan might not work as intended. Many foreign automakers already produce cars in U.S. factories, and American car companies still rely on foreign-made parts. The result? Higher prices for cars, fewer choices for buyers, and economic tension between major global markets. Car makers face rising costs and slower sales. Automakers on both sides of the Atlantic are already feeling the heat. European brands like BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, and Audi are some of the biggest car exporters to the U.S., and these new tariffs will increase their costs significantly. For consumers, this means higher prices at dealerships. The average cost of a European-made car in the U.S. will rise by thousands of dollars, making it harder for many people to afford their preferred brands. Even American automakers are worried. Companies like Ford and General Motors import many car parts from Europe and Asia. The higher cost of these components could force them to raise prices on their vehicles as well. Tesla CEO Elon Musk also expressed concern, calling the impact of tariffs on his company not trivial. Tesla imports some parts from Europe, and Musk knows that higher costs could hurt sales, especially in a highly competitive market. Elon Musk, Tesla faces higher costs. Tesla CEO Elon Musk has also warned about the financial impact of the tariffs. While Trump claimed the tariffs could be net neutral for Tesla, Musk strongly disagreed. He explained that the cost of parts in Tesla cars that come from other countries will rise, which will directly affect the company's pricing. The cost impact is not trivial, Musk wrote on X, making it clear that Tesla will not be immune to the economic consequences of the tariffs. Despite this, Trump's senior trade counselor, Peter Navarro, dismissed concerns about price hikes and job losses. He argued that foreign trade cheaters had turned America's manufacturing sector into a lower-wage assembly operation for foreign parts. This statement reflects the Trump administration's belief that the tariffs will ultimately benefit American industries, even as car companies warn of rising costs. Europe slams Trump's tariff move.
So who stands to be the hardest hit? Well, by far it's Mexico, given the US imports nearly $80 billion worth of vehicles from its southern neighbour, followed by Japan, worth nearly $40 billion, then South Korea and Canada, with over $30 billion worth. In Europe, the US imports most cars from Germany, almost $25 billion worth, and imports from the UK, while smaller, are still worth more than $8 billion.
This will hurt us.
Canada's Prime Minister was visiting a bridge that connects his country to the US and is a key trading hub when news of Trump's tariffs hit.
And this is a direct attack, to be clear, a direct attack on the very workers that I stood in front of at the Ambassador Bridge, a bridge that is a symbol of the tight ties between our two countries, ties that
The European Union has strongly criticized Trump's decision, warning that it could lead to economic damage on both continents. European leaders argue that trade barriers will slow down business growth, hurt investment, and damage key industries. They also stress that the U.S. economy relies on European automakers, which create jobs and bring billions of dollars in investment to the country. European Commission officials have already started discussing their response. One official called the tariffs a reckless economic attack that will backfire on the U.S. The response from France, Italy, and Spain has been similarly critical, with leaders warning that these trade policies will create unnecessary tensions. The automotive industry is a key part of Europe's economy, and governments are determined to protect it. Germany pushes for a strong response.
Germany's economy minister reacted to President Donald Trump's 25% tariffs on car imports as well as auto parts. He said the new tariffs are bad news for German car makers and the German economy. Robert Habeck called on the European Union to provide a decisive response to these latest tariffs, saying they, quote, ultimately harm the U.S. and the EU and global trade as a whole.
Germany, home to some of the world's biggest car brands, is leading the charge against Trump's tariffs. The German government has demanded a strong and united European response, arguing that allowing the tariffs to go unchallenged would set a dangerous precedent. German officials have also pointed out that many German automakers already manufacture cars in the U.S. Companies like BMW, Volkswagen, and Mercedes-Benz operate massive factories in states like South Carolina and Alabama, creating thousands of American jobs. With this in mind, Germany argues that Trump's tariffs hurt American workers just as much as they hurt Europe. One German trade official warned that the U.S. economy will not escape the consequences of these tariffs. If Trump thinks this is a one-way battle, he is mistaken, the official said, adding that Germany will fight back through diplomatic and economic measures. Europe weighs retaliation.
We must consider what will serve Japan's national interest. We're strongly requesting the US not to apply these 25% tariffs on Japan. There are different options. We have to think about which is the most effective and have all options in mind.
I guess the thing is, with Trump's tariffs, we never really know what's coming, what's going to be reduced. These scheduled to go into effect next week is what he said, I believe April 2nd or 3rd. Let's talk about the auto industry in general. This is not the best time for this kind of measure to hit it. Is that fair to say?
That's right. It's not a good time for having increased prices on cars. One thing that he did say was that they're going to introduce tax relief on buying cars, which is effectively stimulus, actually, when you think about it. So that's going to be a thing where, if you, just like with a house, where you get mortgage tax relief. So if they do that, that's going to be interesting. But it certainly isn't a good time for the U.S. car industry. It's struggling with all kinds of issues, global slowdown, and it really could do without it right now.
European leaders are not just talking about the problem, they are planning to hit back. The EU is already considering retaliatory tariffs on American products, including motorcycles, agricultural goods, and even certain car parts. This would make it more expensive for American businesses to sell their products in Europe, creating new economic problems for U.S. companies. Officials are also exploring legal action through the World Trade Organization, WTO. While a legal challenge could take time, it would send a clear message that Europe will not accept unfair trade barriers. If negotiations with Washington fail, the EU may also seek stronger economic partnerships with other global powers such as China and Japan to reduce their reliance on U.S. trade. Top exporters warn of wider consequences.
our response to these latest tariffs is to fight, is to protect, and to build. We will fight the U.S. tariffs with retaliatory trade actions of our own that will have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impacts here in Canada. We will protect our workers and our industries during this difficult period. But above all, we will build a new Canadian economy. We will build Canada strong.
The world's largest car exporters are now speaking out, warning that Trump's tariffs could have consequences beyond Europe and the U.S. Japan, which also exports large numbers of cars to the U.S., has raised concerns that these trade barriers could disrupt the global auto industry. Mexico and Canada, both key players in the North American automotive supply chain, are also closely watching the situation. A representative from Volkswagen stated that the tariffs would damage trust between major economies and disrupt decades of trade progress. Meanwhile, industry leaders from Japan's Toyota and Honda have warned that if the U.S. keeps raising trade barriers, other countries might start doing the same, making the situation worse for everyone. Global outcry.
Well, it depends on model by model and brand by brand how much inventory they have. If this goes through, we could see some prices go up as soon as May, but it won't be as easy as every car, every brand, all the same. It will vary from make to make.
European officials have made it clear they will not sit back and watch their auto industry suffer. A top EU trade representative stated, "We won't back down. If the U.S. imposes unfair tariffs, we will retaliate." Germany, home to some of the world's biggest car manufacturers like BMW and Mercedes-Benz, is leading the charge. The European Union is already preparing countermeasures, and they won't just stop at cars. Other American exports, from agricultural products to industrial goods, could be targeted in response. At the same time, Trump's decision is drawing international criticism. Leaders from around the world are calling his move reckless, warning that it could trigger a full-blown trade war. Canada has been particularly vocal, with its Prime Minister declaring that his country will respond with its own trade actions. The Canadian auto industry is deeply connected to the U.S. market, and any disruption could cost thousands of jobs. Mexico, another key player in North America's car manufacturing network, has also hinted at possible retaliation. The message is clear: Trump's tariffs will not go unanswered.
Different brands are going to have a different impact based on the price, inventory, and the parts content of their cars, not just the car as a whole.
Meanwhile, economists and industry experts are sounding the alarm about the immediate impact on car prices. If the tariffs go into effect, the cost of imported cars will rise by thousands of dollars. Automakers won't absorb these costs. They will pass them on to consumers. A study from an industry research firm estimates that the price of a European luxury car could increase by more than $6,000, while more affordable brands could see price hikes of at least $2,000. Even American car manufacturers will feel the squeeze. Many U.S.-made cars rely on imported parts, which means prices will rise across the board. Car buyers in the U.S. might have to pay more much sooner than they expect.
I think the manufacturer has no choice but to pass that along to the consumer because they need to drive profits.
How quickly does that get passed on to the consumer?
Anything that has not been shipped yet or is at the dock that's getting shipped into these ports that's ultimately going into a vehicle to be manufactured, it's immediate.
As tensions rise, major car companies are scrambling to respond. Some automakers are considering shifting production away from the U.S. to avoid the tariffs, while others are delaying investment decisions until the situation becomes clearer. A spokesperson for Toyota called the tariffs a serious threat to global trade stability, adding that higher prices will hurt both automakers and consumers. In the U.S., dealerships are bracing for a slowdown in sales, fearing that fewer people will be able to afford new cars. Despite the growing backlash, Trump remains defiant. He insists that the tariffs are necessary to protect American jobs and reduce the trade deficit. However, critics argue that his approach will do more harm than good. The auto industry is one of the most interconnected in the world, and disrupting it could have severe consequences. Many U.S. workers depend on foreign automakers that have factories in America, and if those companies decide to scale back operations, jobs will be lost. Instead of strengthening the U.S. economy, the tariffs could weaken it. As the situation unfolds, the risk of escalation remains high. If Europe and other nations follow through on their threats of retaliation, a trade war could erupt, affecting industries beyond automobiles. U.S. farmers, who have already suffered from previous trade disputes, could face new challenges if their exports are hit with tariffs. American manufacturers that rely on international supply chains might see production costs skyrocket. The consequences of Trump's decision could spread far beyond the auto industry. In the coming weeks, all eyes will be on negotiations between the U.S. and its trade partners. Some hope that diplomatic talks will lead to a resolution before the tariffs take full effect. However, if no agreement is reached, the impact will be felt quickly. Consumers will see higher prices, businesses will face uncertainty, and global trade relationships will become more strained. One thing is certain: Trump's tariffs have set the stage for a major economic showdown, and the world is preparing to fight back. Will Trump's gamble pay off, or will his tariffs backfire? Stay tuned for more updates. This fight is far from over. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Subscribe.